In Chapter 3, we're going to look at various models of differentiation and also what the experts say in this field. As you remember in the Texas State Plan that they instruct us that we have to group these children. Karen Rogers is a guru in the concept of grouping gifted children. She's done years of research. And on this slide we can look at different ways that we group our GT students. The first way that she points out is full-time GT grouping. This, for example, is like our WAVE program where all the classes have only gifted kids in them. This, according to her research, is the way that gifted students make the greatest academic strides. For these students, academically, this is the best form of grouping. The second way to group is to cluster group. We've already mentioned this in the previous chapter, but this is what we use here in CCISD. We try to put them in groups of 5 to 8. This way they can work together as a group and have peers that are possibly working at their same academic level. The next thing that we can do is accelerate the students. A student may pre-test in a unit, allowing those who test out of that unit to work on something different, to work at their own level. We may group these students, at a higher grade level for a specific subject, or we may even let them skip a grade, and we can do this through the CBE, which is a credit by exam. You may want to group them subject specific. Students may be allowed to work in groups on a specific project in any area that is of interest to them after they have already mastered the content of the grade. Cross-grade grouping. You may have a student who goes to 4th grade for math, he's in 3rd grade for reading, could go to 5th grade for reading and be in actually a 4th grade class during the day. So you're really grouping him according to his academic need. Another form of grouping that we use here in CCISD in the elementary grade levels is the pull-out program. Students may spend maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours per week focusing on advanced learning and products. The problem with this is that students are not just gifted 1.5 to 2 hours a week. They're gifted all week long. So actually their differentiation needs to be done in their regular classroom all day long, not just for an hour and a half to 2 hours once a week. Another way of grouping is within class ability groups, which we see a lot when we have our reading groups. We usually group them according to their ability, their reading level. You can also have cooperative or heterogeneous grouping. One thing that I feel needs to be examined is how we group gifted children in high school. I know that all students have the opportunity to accelerate through our advanced placement classes. The problem with this is that in those classes you have your truly gifted children who catch on very quickly, and then you have those children who maybe they're high achievers, maybe their parents make them take that class. Because it helps them get into college, helps them prepare for college. But not all students breeze through advanced placement, whereas our gifted children a lot of times do. And so my question is, are we grouping appropriately? Should we really examine this so that students who are able to move at a faster pace aren't being held back? The next thing we want to look at is the Maker's Model, a differentiated curriculum. The 3 most common things you hear about differentiating are content, process, and product. These are the 3 areas you can differentiate in. When we look at content, if a student has shown mastery of the content you're getting ready to teach, why should he or she have to work only on that content? You can allow them to go deeper into that content or even allow them to work on an independent project in another area. Next area is the process. You can differentiate how a student will go through a unit. For example, some students could be working through books, some through online resources, and other options like that. Many gifted students do well with discovery learning. Give them the question and let them find the answer to it. The other way to differentiate is through the product. You can differentiate how a student will demonstrate what they've learned. Example, 5th grade GT project. Student researching different topics also did a variety of different products, from posters to word searches to technology projects to information cubes, 3D models, quizzes, and the idea for products goes on and on. So, as you can see on the slide, we looked at content, process, and product. But the most important thing is the learning environment. Only if a teacher has set up a room and expectations for differentiation can the content, process, and product modifications take place. Dr. Joyce Gentune is a professor at Texas A&M University, and this is her 5-star model for differentiating the curriculum. She says that all students, including gifted, can benefit from differentiating in the areas of student interest, pace of the curriculum, and breadth of the curriculum. Looking specifically at interest, using a book, video, website related to the topic, but within the realm of the student interest. The pace. Why spend instruction time on something for which your students have shown mastery? Objectives that have not been introduced in an earlier grade may need a slower pace, while something the students are familiar with might be able to be covered at a much quicker pace. Breadth. You can bring in newspaper articles, weekly reader articles that talk about the topic that you're covering, but actually connect it to the current day events. All students can benefit from those 3 ways of differentiating. Gifted students also benefit from differentiation in depth and complexity. This is Dr. Laura McKay's model. She looks at the fluency, elaboration, flexibility, and originality. These are some concepts covered extensively in the creativity workshop. It's very, very important that we include creativity because our students really respond to that area of novelty. And by using these 4 components, you really allow the students to stretch their thinking, to really bring in as much as they can into the curriculum. She looks at breadth, bring in other sources such as newspaper articles, websites, that not only provide additional source but also forms that bridge to real life. For your gifted students, try using a triple Venn diagram, adding a 3rd dimension to their thinking about the topic. With pace, have students complete the 5 most difficult items on the assignment first. If they've mastered that, they don't need to do 100 practice problems. You know that they have the concept. They can move on. You can give them a mini assignment that would be similar to what they've already done so that they can work through it more quickly. Students work on shorter assignments to demonstrate mastery, and you can also compact the curriculum. You're going to move more quickly. You're not going to reteach what they've already known or what they already know. The next thing that she has on here is depth and complexity, and in a little while we'll look at Dr. Kaplan, Sandra Kaplan, model of depth and complexity and how she uses the icons to help the students really understand the concept. Dr. Bertie Kingore also has a lot of ideas. She's out of Austin, Texas, so we went from College Station to Austin now, but anyway, she works out of Austin, Texas, and she looks at differentiation from the point of view of the teacher. And basically what you can see here on this slide is how to begin differentiation at the very simplest mode, and as you continue to work through it, you can make it more and more sophisticated. With what you see here, just the simple way would just be thinking and inquiry. That would be more of your questioning and differentiating through questioning. flexible grouping. How do you group the class? And obviously, we're already doing that flexible grouping, especially in the elementary grades with our reading. I mean, we look at what reading level they are and we put them in the groups according to that. Sometimes we don't do that so much in math, and maybe we need to look at it more in math. Again, I go to the grouping in high school that we really don't do a lot of specific grouping for our accelerated students, although there are opportunities for outside learning. What we as teachers, as high school teachers, need to do is find those students who will benefit from this, from maybe a quicker pace or maybe outside programs, mentorship programs or whatever, and group them that way. So I would say in elementary school we probably do it a lot more than we do it in the secondary groups. Another easy way for differentiation is give them open-ended tasks. Don't give them something where there's just a right and a wrong answer. Give them an opportunity to explore. And then the other simple way is having the students as producers, what they're creating. Again, don't make every single project, every kid have to do exactly the same project. Figure out what the idea is that you want them to cover, and then differentiate the product based on the concepts. Then intermediate implementation, the student-teacher working together to develop centers, diversified product options, independent study projects, research. And the reason that this is an intermediate option as opposed to a simple option is because it does take a lot of time and a lot of energy to figure out exactly what the student is going to complete, how they're going to complete it, and how you're going to evaluate it. It does take time. Creating the rubrics, because the kids you can't just send them off and say, okay, go research what you're interested in. You need to have set guidelines because they are here to learn, and you do have to cover the TEKS. Another thing that you can do is student self-assessment. What I find with these kids is they're very honest. If I say, okay, I want you to assess yourself on how you did, I mean, most of them don't give them, at least at the younger grades, don't give themselves an A on everything they've done. They really evaluate what they've done, and they're very honest. In fact, I found some kids that are just too hard on themselves, and I have to say, well, wait a minute, you didn't really fail that. Let's look at it again. So that's why it's a little bit more difficult to do that student self-assessment. And then Dr. Kingor says that pre-assessment is an intermediate implementation. I have a little problem with that. I feel pre-assessment, it should be our #1 goal. We should be pre-assessing. We should know where our kids are, because if we don't, how do we differentiate? So maybe it is a little bit harder, but it should be done all the time. And finally, a more sophisticated implementation of differentiation is curriculum compacting and tiered assignments. And we'll look at both of those in depth in future slides. Jerome Bruner has studied education for a long time, and he, as you can see here, he has a spiral curriculum. Jerome Bruner had this research in 1961, and he says the purpose of education is not to impart knowledge, but instead to facilitate a child's thinking and problem-solving skills, which can then be transformed to a range of situations. Specifically, education should also develop symbolic thinking in children. Bruner explained how this was possible through the concept of spiral curriculum. This involved information being structured so that complex ideas can be taught at a simplified level first, and then revisited at more complex levels later. Therefore, subjects would be taught at levels of gradually increasing difficulty. Ideally, teaching this way should lead to children being able to solve problems by themselves. Bruner proposes that learners construct their own knowledge and do this by organizing and categorizing information using a coding system. Bruner believes that the most effective way to develop a coding system is to discover it, rather than being told it by the teacher. The concept of discovery learning implies that students construct their own knowledge for themselves. This is also known as constructivist approach. The role of the teacher should not be to teach information by rote learning, but instead to facilitate the learning process. This means that a good teacher will design lessons that help students discover the relationship between bits of information. To do this, a teacher must give students the information they need, but without organizing them. The use of the spiral curriculum can aid the process of discovery learning. If you look at questions 6 and 7 on your study guide, question number 6, for Bruner, 1961, the purpose of education is not to impart knowledge, but instead to facilitate a child's thinking and problem-solving skills. On question number 7, it says the concept of discovery learning implies that students construct their own knowledge for themselves, also known as constructivist approach.